What is up, guys? Archon, and I'm here bringing you guys another YouTube video. So we got some big Final Fantasy VII news out there, and I want to cover it. I think it was a couple hours ago, it was announced that Square has actually trademarked Ever Crisis, the First Soldier, and Shinra's logo. So there is going to be some spoilers to Final Fantasy VII Remake in this video. If you have not played the game, I would suggest clicking off the video now, because I'm about to go into what happens at the end of 7, because it pertains to Ever Crisis. So for those who have played the game or just don't care, stick around. I'm going to talk about Ever Crisis as well as the other two, but mainly want to focus on Ever Crisis. So basically, at the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, we had three timelines essentially. The original timeline, which gets overwritten by the Arbiter dying. We now have the new timeline where Remake is held, and we have no idea what's going to happen with that timeline. Like what changes they're going to make. And third, we had Zack surviving outside of Midgar. And this is a really interesting timeline that they can use here. And that's probably where Ever Crisis takes place, is what happens after Crisis Core, where Zack lives. So, for those who aren't aware just how big a deal this is, this means that Cloud never inherits the Buster Sword. And who knows where he is mentally from the, Mako infusion and the Genova cell infusion. Because what pulled him out of that, or at least a little bit, was when Zack died and he seen Zack's body on the ground. It kind of snapped him out of it a little bit. He was still a little bit out of it, didn't know who he was or anything. But at least he was able to take the Buster Sword and crawl his way to Midgar. And the other thing that happens in Midgar is Tifa finds him at the Sector 7 Slums train yard. And I believe Sephiroth in the original Final Fantasy VII describes it as the Genova cells in Cloud latching onto the memories that were in Tifa's heart. And that's what rebuilt Cloud to be what Cloud was for the first portion of the game. It was a mix between Zack dying and him wanting to be like Zack, and his collective memories that Tifa and him had when they were children. So if those two things don't happen, where does that leave Cloud? It's a very interesting situation for him. I'm sure that Zack is probably headed back to Aerith in the slums. So maybe Tifa will come across Cloud at some point in the slums. Who knows? But they're definitely probably headed towards Aerith, would be my guess. Because Zack and Aerith weren't necessarily dating yet. I believe there was talks of them dating once Zack got back from his mission. Which he obviously never comes back from in the original. So it's going to be very interesting to see where Cloud ends up in all this. If I had to give my honest guess, I would say there's going to be a couple more games in the Crisis Core series. And by the end of Remake, somehow Zack will end up syncing up timelines, essentially. They'll do a time skip or something where the timelines then match up with Zack and Cloud and, Cloud on the other side in Remake. And Zack will end up joining the party to face Sephiroth in the final showdown. That would be my guess as to where they're going to go with this. But it's definitely intriguing news. I can't wait to try Ever Crisis. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing, amazing game. Just a little nervous about the whole timeline jumping situation with Remake. Hopefully they can pull it together and they can make it coherent. That's usually one of the things that's very hard to do with timeline jumps. Because there's always all these plot holes that end up getting developed. As for the First Soldier, if I had to guess, this is either going to pertain to Sephiroth, it's either going to pertain to Genesis, or it's going to pertain to Angeal. But I'm betting money that it's going to be Sephiroth because I don't know if Angeal has been mentioned, and I don't know if Genesis has been mentioned in the remake. I can't remember the reference if there was one. There may have been a reference inside the Shinra headquarters, and I'm just blanking on it right now. But odds are this is probably going to talk about Sephiroth, and I'm wondering if maybe this will explain how Sephiroth is able to communicate with Cloud in the remake in order to let him know about events that are going to happen through the Genova cells that are in his body. Because that's what it would have to be, is the Genova cells. Because Cloud was, I believe, the only one seeing them up until the Arbiter of Time, or Fate or whatever, where the Fate, when it was dying, was sending all of the particles or whatever, the Pyreflies we'll call them. We'll just make a Final Fantasy X reference here. But basically the Pyreflies would go into the party and it would show them flashes of the original timeline. So I'm curious about First Soldier as well and how that's going to play out and what that's going to be like storyline wise. As for the Shinra logo, kind of curious on that one. So basically what the article says is Square-Enix filed trademarks for the above on December 17th for the first two, and then for the Power Company logo, December 22nd. All three trademarks were just made public today. Ever Crisis shares a similar name to the 2004 release mobile game before Crisis, Final Fantasy VII, and the 2007 Crisis Core. So it was before Crisis that came out on the mobile. The first soldier may be a reference to Sephiroth, the main villain of Final Fantasy VII, which I mentioned, or it's going to be a reference to Genesis or Angeal. The Shinra Electric Power Company is an organization in Final Fantasy VII. In related news, Namco Bandai, Starlight. Okay, so no, this is just not important. Basically, that's all we have on it right now. It's just speculation. Honestly, you can speculate a bit more like I did for Ever Crisis as well as for Soldier. As for the Shinra logo, I have no idea. Unless we're getting some prequel series to the original Final Fantasy where we get to see what built the Shinra company and how they stumbled upon Genova's body in order to inject people with Genova cells. Maybe we'll get a story about Lucrecia and Vincent in the past when he was a Turk. That could be something that could be coming this way for sure. God, there's so many things to speculate here. But I wanted to cover it because it does seem like it's very important news. It's kind of telling us the roadmap for what we're going to get in terms of games going forward. I wonder if we're going to get part 2 for Remake, and then we're going to get Ever Crisis First Soldier and something to do with the Shinra logo. Or if they're going to sprinkle them every other title, maybe. Interesting to see what happens. What are you guys' thoughts down below? Let me know. I'd love to have a dialogue with you guys about Final Fantasy VII. It's one of my favorite games of all time, obviously. I enjoyed the remake immensely. Wish there was more to it, sadly. There really wasn't a whole lot of substance to the game itself. The materia system really felt dummied down a bit, and I understand it was a short game, and it was meant to just get you through Midgar, and there really wasn't a lot of materia between. But at the same time, it does definitely feel dummied down. Anyways, let me know down below what do you guys think, and as always, if you like the video, helps me out with the algorithm. You don't have to sub, but I would appreciate it if you guys would at least like the video if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, take it easy. Hopefully your 2021 is going well, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.